All right, everybody, welcome back to Beans No Ball. See a little something a little different here. We'll get into what the reason for the special attire, but of course, welcome to the Week 7 recap. Just wrapped up Monday night. Just another crazy week of football. As we've been saying, I mean the script writers really outdid themselves with this one. So got a lot to talk about. Christian, let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, so this is a very crazy week. Lots of pretty upsetting wins that we not expect. But obviously, without further ado, let's kick it right off with the Thursday nighter of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New Orleans Saints. Now, this was starting off nice week with another nail biter. Jacksonville Jaguars, they seem to have the game really in their hands for most of the game, and then I don't know where the Saints started to have a little comeback. Finally, a switch finally clicked in them, and started trying to come back as well. Obviously, the Saints came up just short as they were driving with Derek Carr actually having a pretty decent game after all the backlash he was receiving from the past couple of games of him not being able to get the ball down the field as much for the Saints. But this game he was once again playing he was playing fairly well for the most part. It was just that dropped pass by Foster Moreau in the end zone that was a potentially game-tying touchdown, and obviously lots of emotions going through Foster Moreau, but his team is trying to cover him down. It was just a really sad loss for here. Could have been a choke for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but defense kept them in the game for the most part as well, and the Saints still have a lot to kind of work around, so hopefully Derek Carr can kind of get adjusted and let this game pass, especially for Foster Moreau.
Yeah, so moving into the Sunday slate, and let's kick it off right here with a really surprising result here. And the Bears took it to the Raiders. I mean, I know we've been really preaching or at least me specifically, I know you still like to hate on the Raiders, but their defense has been looking really good, and I guess this just turned into just a polar opposite. I'm sure Max Crosby was polarizing himself. He did do what he could, but I guess when you look at it, he is yet again the focal point, the only real part that the Raiders really have on defense. So we see 30 points against one of the most disappointing teams in the league right now, the Chicago Bears. It says a lot about the Raiders. But of course, the story of this game was Tyler Bagent. Stepping up for the injured Justin Fields, and sure, it doesn't show on the stat sheet. It was a pretty mediocre game, but he did what he had to do. He got the Bears 30 points, and the Bears defense pretty sound. Got the job done themselves. Of course, Dante Foreman, someone who you remember pretty well from his little run on fantasy last year. He had a game himself with 2 touchdowns. Really, I guess him and Bagent were the ones who a really good 1-2 punch to really get a little jolt for the Bears offense. We'll see how much this really helps them moving forward, but you would expect them to kind of just keep it on the down low to help their draft stock.
Yeah, now moving on to an AFC, a nice, pretty elegant AFC showdown between two teams that have potential to possibly sneak into the playoffs. And story of this game with the Cleveland Browns and the Indianapolis Colts was the refs. This whole game, the officiating was just very bad, especially towards the Indy side, and especially with the defense of the Cleveland Browns, which was pretty much why that kind of helped them stay in this game, even though this was a very neck-to-neck game with both teams. But story of the Cleveland Browns, 4-2. Lots of eyes going around saying that the Cleveland Browns are probably the worst 4-2 team here, 4-2 team in this in the team, another team in the league, especially with the teams that they played. But hey, you can't really blame them. They don't make the games here, but it was just a really bad loss for this Indianapolis Colts. Refs really screwed them on this part, especially towards the end, in the fourth quarter. But Kareem Hunt pretty much in clutch with the touchdowns to secure the ending in the game, which helped me in fantasy for once. Kareem Hunt, which was really nice to see, and especially with the AFC North on how pretty not so open it is. But Cleveland Browns, they do have potential to possibly sneak in a wild card spot at the second seed. Obviously, their known competition right now at the moment is being the Bengals, and we do see how the Cleveland Browns are against the Bengals. But with the Indianapolis Colts, still with that quarterback situation of Gardner Minshew, he had a pretty okay game. It just really came towards the end. Really, sure, put the blame on him however you want, but bad officiating. But bad officiating happens. It's happened having a lot really recently in the past couple years in the NFL. But really, what more can you do?
Yeah, so moving into another historically good AFC East matchup in the Bills and the Patriots, and I guess you guys say probably the upset of the year up until now. We see one of the worst teams we've seen, you know, up to date in the Patriots. You know, we've said it all. Bill Belichick's worst start. You know, obviously we alluded a lot to it in our video earlier in the week, last week. You know, the Patriots look really horrible, and out of nowhere, you know, I mean, when the pass protection was there, Mac Jones does look like a solid quarterback. That's a big thing that I was preaching, that, you know, you got to give Mac Jones, you know, enough time to, you know, you got to give him some leeway. And I mean, a good game for the O-line really gave him, I mean, phenomenal stats, over 270 with 2 touchdowns, just a game that he's really showing, I mean, that potential he always showed in Alabama. I mean, we see Ramondre Stevenson had a slow game. I guess, you know, you could say what you want there. I mean, he was, I mean, only 34 yards. Probably would have expected more from him, you know, like a resurgence for the Patriots. But on the other thing, I mean, Kendrick Bourne himself, who I know you're a big fan of him, just a great well-rounded receiver overall, and he finally had a good bounce back here. Finally got back into the end zone. Just a great game. And I mean, for the Bills, you see Josh Allen. It's like, you know, it seems to be that curse that he always seems to play down a competition. We see it once again. It's just, it's something the Bills really got to wake up. This has to be a really big wake-up call for the Bills. That, I mean, they've lost to, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they lost to Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, 2 quarterbacks that you really don't want to be losing to. And it's going to be a big back to the drawing board for the Bills here. And, you know, just the last little piece of information, of course, big congratulations to Bill Belichick on his 300th regular season win, joining George Halas and Don Shula. So just adds to his Hall of Fame resume.
Yeah. And then now moving on to another historic matchup with the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. This was I guess you could say it was a shit show. I mean, not really a big game here, 14-7. It was very close, though, very close. It was a very nice, huge defensive battle between both teams. And obviously, with this game, Tyrod Taylor really stepping in for the Daniel Jones with his neck injury. Lots of not conspiracies, lots of, you know, speculation going on whether Tyrod Taylor is going to take the starting job of the New York Giants furthermore for the season. But all that has been debunked by Dable and the New York Giants, saying that regardless of what happens, fully healthy Daniel Jones, he will be the starter of this team. Now, could Daniel Jones potentially be the main reason why the Giants are struggling? Yes. We see how, you know, his playmaking, his decision making, especially that big contract extension that we talked about in the beginning of the season, how really bad this was a really bad move by the New York Giants by Daniel Jones. Sure. No receiving core, really anything. You got a rookie Jalen Hyatt. You still got guys like Isaiah Hodgins. But he was able to compete it last year with no receiving core, still managed to make the playoffs. This season, it just really hasn't been clicking at all for the New York Giants. They played a really nice game against Buffalo, but that's really about it. So regardless of what the quarterback situation is, Tyrod Taylor really stepped up in this game. And then for the Commanders, same old Commanders. I know how I call the Giants being worse this season than the Commanders, which, you know, seemed for the most of it. But this was just a bad overall game by the Commanders as well. Sam Howell, it just, you know, you gotta feel bad for the guy. He's really doing everything he can, but obviously he's not getting the blocks, you know. And you got a receiver one, Terry McLaurin, who's, you know, really not getting as much production as he can. But, you know, there's a lot of arguments you can make with the Washington Commanders. So whether it's Sam Howell, the receiving core, the play calling, but this whole game really proved that the Washington Commanders, there's a lot more flaws going on rather than just the coaching itself. But the quarterback situation of Sam Howell, whether or not he played a couple games this season, you know, you should start looking into once again the Commanders' quarterback situation once again, what's stumping them in this season.
Yeah, so moving into another big divisional matchup seems to be loaded up in this week. And with the Saints loss earlier in the week, the Falcons and the Buccaneers, this one would be for the supremacy in the AFC South, in the NFC South. And just a low scoring affair. Just, both quarterbacks really had a rough outing. Desmond Ridder, we know how on and off he can be. He's shown flashes that, hey, he could be that franchise quarterback for the Falcons. And, you know, sometimes, something like this, it was a pretty mediocre outing. Sure, he did get to 250, just a great, look on the stat line, but no touchdowns himself. It was a really sloppy game for him. And, Baker Mayfield, same, really nice looking stat sheet, but that interception, a lot of sloppiness. He went 27 for 42, so it was, take it for what you will, but I guess big story at the end, just Younghoe Koo, one of the best kickers in the league, and he got it done for the Falcons. Just a big that is what's going to get us supremacy. I know we had this disagreement here. You are always really high on Baker Mayfield yourself, and obviously that was what would end up costing you for this one matchup.
Yeah, now moving on to another game with two high teams of each conference, the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. And my, oh my, Lamar Jackson looking like his old MVP self once again. He really stampeded through this Lions defense. And this was supposed to be a Lions defense that's starting to pick it up a bit. You know, when you got lots of young guys on that receiving core and that defensive line that they have there, really expected a lot from the Detroit Lions. But this game, Baltimore Ravens really showed out. And when we're looking at this Ravens team, Lamar Jackson, we saw his receivers, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr. Odell's really past his prime. Zay Flowers is still a developing rookie. Lots of potential. And then the really weak run game that the Baltimore Ravens have with, Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. The loss of J.K. Dobbins with that ACL. The Achilles really did hurt him. But once again, it's overshadowed again since they're winning. And, the Baltimore Ravens, they're pretty much sealed, not necessarily sealed, but obviously way better potential to win their division, especially with competition with the Browns and potentially the Bengals. But they really showed out. Defense was really on this heels, really showing, really proving to anyone that when this defense can really prove themselves, especially since they're looking a little sloppy from weekend here, weekend out. And the offense of Lamar Jackson, what more can he do? He had a good game on the ground and in the air. Really phenomenal job by Lamar Jackson. Another understatement, nothing more to say there. But with Detroit, could you really say that, could you already label them as pretenders, frauds, since, they're not good with good teams? You can label that, but again, we're approaching mid-season. There's still a lot of changes to do with the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff, he's been having a phenomenal season. And then Jahmyr Gibbs finally getting involved in the game where they lose. I would like to see Jahmyr Gibbs get more involved in the run game other than David Montgomery. David Montgomery, he is doing pretty well for the most part. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown having a great season for him as well. But I know Dan Campbell, have lots of trust in Dan Campbell. I know you do. He is your coach of the year. That coaching staff all around. I'm pretty sure they'll be able to make some changes from here on out. But it was just a really big domination from the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, so let's just get into my game, man. I really want to promise you guys that I keep this short. I really don't want to get too deep into this, but let's just get into it right here with I'll just get this out the way. Yes, the refs did fuck us over in that ceiling drive for the Steelers. Whether it was that pass interference on Witherspoon, that gave him, that extra field position, and the key thing here that fourth down play with Kenny Pickett should have given us the ball back. But obviously, McVay didn't save the timeout. It wasn't inside 2 minutes. If you think about it's a dumb rule to consider that you can't review that play, but it is what it is. We know the rule book. So I'll just set that out the way. At the end of the day, Stafford played horrible in that second half. So even if we did get the ball back, I'm not expecting us to go down the field and actually do something. I'm pretty sure it would have been a 3-and-out, a slow stalled out possession, and that would have been it. But that's just the thing. It was a poor game for Stafford. The O-line it was a so-so game for the O-line. I kind of just see more of it in Stafford, and I guess big key thing. I know good and well about this. Brett Maher had another horrible game. To miss the extra point, that's in itself. But the missed field goals really hurt us. One was a 51-yarder. I get that. It's when he gets to 50 plus, it's he's more iffy in general. But the 38-yarder that really killed us. Momentum kills in general. You stall out drives like that, it's gonna kill you. And just to go back on Stafford, I said, he had a horrible second half. It's just all started with that second half. With the first play in the second half, the interception to TJ Watt first play. That was another massive momentum shift for the Steelers, and in the end, that was the play that really pushed it the other way. In which we made Matt Canada look like a confident OC. That's all I got to say right there. It was just an all-around pretty bad game. to put up a performance like this, I mean, I get the Steelers are kind of on the rise, but a performance like this really does hit me like, is this team really going to contend?
Yeah, obviously your team sucks to see there, but all you gotta do is wait and see. But obviously, moving on from that game with the divisional matchup, once again, backtracking to this of the NFC West, Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks, and oh man, this was a pretty nice game, pretty decently game to see. It was pretty close for the most part, but Geno Smith once again bouncing back from a loss where they probably should have won that game against the Cincinnati Bengals, but bouncing back. Sure, it's the Cardinals. Say what you want, it's the Cardinals, but they've been keeping up this whole season. They've been putting on a fight, and that's really expected, especially since they're labeled as supposed to be potentially the worst team in the league. But I mean, what more can you say about that? But this was just a nice, really well controlled game by the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith had himself a game, especially Kenneth Walker as well. Great game on the run. Really young second-year guy. Really lots of potential for him. He looked like bright lights of Marshawn Lynch, a little bit of Kenneth Walker in that. And this young defense of the Seahawks as well could put labeled as Legion of Boom 2.0. I mean, it's pretty weird. You could say it's weird, or it's just a coincidence that the Seahawks just developed really great hard-hitting defensive players. I mean, with past Legion Boom like Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner, Richard Sherman, guys like that. This is a baby version of them, but can't really label them right now. They're still young, still developing, still got a long way to go, especially with the Seahawks, some inconsistencies here and there. But it was just, this game was a pretty well controlled game from a pretty horrible divisional opponent. But, still be able to keep them in the game, still a 10-point game. But Seahawks expectations are starting to rise a little bit more for them. So hopefully Geno's will be able to capitalize off this game to succeed better in the future.
Yeah, so Christian, let's get into another one of your boys right here in Jordan Love, the Packers yet again. I mean, what else are we gonna get into here? I mean, it looked bad from the start. I mean, sure, the Broncos, they were cooking. They let Russ cook. Broncos country was riding. They were just in it was looking like the Broncos were gonna ride away to a really a solid win, a smooth win. But sure, I will give it to Jordan Love. He kind of did mount that comeback. It was looking good. You were getting signs of that, just like that Saints game. I mean, pretty poor start, but I mean, hey, if you can find a way to finish games, that's at the end of the day, that's all you need in this league. But I mean, that interception. I mean, sure, you talk about those 2 touchdowns, that the amount of comeback, a game-losing interception, something that we always talk about with Herbert. I know we'll get into that right now, but it's just a big thing that it's starting to become a trend with Jordan Love, that he might start building a nice little drive, but if he continues to make these mistakes, it's really going to start costing him. And look, I mean, for you, it became a big thing that, you really expected him to come into his own this year. To me, I mean, I still do have hope for Jordan Love. I really like him as a quarterback, but I'm expecting him to come into it next year. Right now, it's really not his time. I'm expecting right now to really be a lot of growing pains, and it's really showing, of course, right here. And I mean, if you just look at the Packers stats in general, I mean, the receiving core really suffered. I mean, Christian Watson really couldn't get nothing going. I mean, their leading receiver was A.J. Dillon. That's all you got to really see there. And it was just a really tough game. I mean, to make the Broncos as a whole look this complete of a team, it's going to be a tough one to ride this season out for the Packers.
Yeah, now obviously staying in the AFC and looking at the West, another division matchup between the Chiefs and the Chargers. Now, I kind of expected this to be a pretty good game. It looked pretty okay for the most part, pretty close at halftime with the Chiefs leading 24-17. So a 1-possession game, but at half, Chargers, they could not get anything done whatsoever. I mean, Justin Herbert once again. I mean, what more can you say, really? I mean, Joshua Palmer, I mean, he had a good game for himself, but he really couldn't do much. Keenan Allen, I mean, decent, but it really wasn't helping at all. And Austin Eckler, who's supposed to be a top back in the league, top 10 back, you could argue. But again, his injury is really stumping him. And I don't know if I don't recall one of us calling it or whoever did, but once again, there's another injury of a player who's really going to slow him down. I mean, I expected him to run over my defense, but that wasn't the case. And in this case, with the Chiefs defense that's starting to be on the rise once again, with that D-line finally starts picking up more in the run game, and that secondary starting to be a contending defense than how they were the past couple of games and the last season. But Mahomes just really got it done over this Chargers defense, who's pretty bad, you can say, has good glimpses here and there, but this defense has been, it's been a little iffy since the start. And Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback that he is, already a potentially Hall of Fame quarterback, doing what he does best, cooking up these kind of defenses. I mean, almost 430 yards with 4 touchdowns. I mean, what more can you say with this? Just really great on the Chiefs, finally on the rise back again on a win on a game that you would expect it to win over, especially over a division rival. And pretty much when you're looking to you got the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos. I mean, Chiefs are 6-1, couple games ahead of these teams. So once again, they got this division on lock. But with the AFC, it is a little tougher division than the NFC. So Chiefs still got a lot of little competition, but with Mahomes, he could still potentially write it off. As for the Chargers, I think it's time to say, once again, for the past couple of weeks, Brandon Staley, I think it's time for him to go. The play calling is it's really bad. Kellen Moore, I mean, he produces on offense, don't get me wrong, but this game really showed that Kellen Moore can't really get it done with his play calling, and just all around really bad game from the Chargers.
Yeah, so we will cap off Sunday with, of course, the Sunday Nighter, and a matchup of that I really am expecting. This could be a Super Bowl preview. You see two just really phenomenal teams here phenomenal offenses in the Dolphins and the Eagles, 2 former Alabama quarterbacks. That was obviously the big storyline coming into this with Tua and Jalen Hurts. But I mean, it was all Eagles to start. I mean, can't say nothing more. I mean, the Eagles defense is, as much as you love to say it, they have been stalling out. They played Miami phenomenally. They held Raheem Mostert, the top back in the league, up to this point, to basically nothing. I believe he was in negative yardage in the first half. It was just it's a stifling defense of just a perfect game plan to start. And sure, Miami did start mounting that comeback, and they ended up tying this game up. But I mean, when you got some help from the refs, it's gonna be a little easier. I mean, sure, I always say, I don't like to bring in the refs in situations like this, but yet again on Sunday night, you see 0 penalties called on the Eagles when there was a lot of questionable calls. You see face masks being thrown around, just a bunch of holds from the number 1 O-line in the league, getting away with a lot of calls. So I mean, it's tough to look at this for what it's worth. I really do think Miami had a lot more left out on the field because of those calls, and it's just to wait and see if these two teams will meet again.
Yeah, now let's kick it off with the Monday Nighter. Now, as you can see, why we're dressed up, not too serious, just shits and giggles, keeping the channel just a little spiffy. But the Niners' downfall, obviously, don't take it too serious. It's just jokes here and there, no big deal. But let's really get into this game. Obviously, our segment from last Thursday of our first episode of Bean Talk, we talked about is this Purdy's Linsanity run, is it over? And from the looks of it, it could potentially be it. I mean, he lost to primetime Kirk. I mean, now all of a sudden Kirk Cousins, he's just good against great teams. I mean, big Kirko, you'd love to see it. And then my guy, who I've really been keeping an eye on since the start, Jordan Addison. I really love him, man. Especially, honestly, he's supposed to step up for Jay Jettis, which hopefully he is recovering from his injury, which is great, speedy recovery. But Jordan Addison taking the load of this receiving core, and he really showed out today with 2 touchdowns. Really love to see it. And then Powell and KJ Osborne getting some snaps here and there, which really did help us against a Niners defense that's supposed to be the number 1 in the league, especially with that secondary. And then obviously Tre'Davious Ward. I mean, Jordan Addison was just cooking him all game, getting into his head. He had a couple penalties, which really costed the Niners a couple here and there. But other than that, it was a very great executed game by the Minnesota Vikings. They're 3-4. Season is not over, but the NFC North could potentially be up and running for them to sneak in still. Division, I'm not too sure. The Lions, like I said, how I talked about them, they could, get rid of that game and, work their way up against another potential team. But who knows? Any given Sunday, any given Monday, anything could happen. Could Vikings possibly run away from the division? Hot take, a little bit of stretch, but you never know. It is a potential sneak into a wildcard team as well with how they're playing. Kirk Cousins, when the O-line blocks for him, when he's in the zone, when he gets less pressure on him, and his receivers can actually create separation. The play call is actually great. Little here misses from Kevin O'Connell, whose clock management, this game got a little bit better. Vikings, they could make a run this season. They really could. Really big Cinderella season for them. And the Niners, 0-2 in the last 2 games. Brock Purdy, I know your narrative with him saying system quarterback. Sure, he still argue with this game, but potentially proved it. But again, it's still in the season. I still think the Niners could still potentially be a top team. But once again, it's the pressure finally coming to Purdy. Is he going to be good without his weapons? Debo was out of this game. So was Trent Williams. He had McCaffrey, but the fumble in the first quarter kind of set the momentum towards the Vikings. But still a lot of time to tell. But anything can happen in this league any given Sunday.
Yeah, so of course, like you said, of course it is the jokes, but gotta show out for a team that we both got our specific feelings for. So that's gonna wrap it up for our week 7 recap, and of course season's just going by. We'll get into our records, and this was one of our worst weeks to date. We went 4-9 on these games evenly. Of course, we had one disagreement, split it, so still ahead on you at 9-7 on disagreements, and stayed because of those disagreements, stayed 2 games ahead of you on the overall record. So we got a full slate of 16 games, no one on bye, so let's see what magic we can work here. So of course this week's going to be a little different. We got a very special game coming up this week, big bragging rights coming up. So I'll just get into my highlight game right away, so we can both talk about our game together. So highlighting the Bengals and the Niners. So it's a game that I really started talking about since Bean Talk. This is going to be yet another game that, sure, we saw. Just right now, the Vikings game for the Niners really was. It was telling that when Purdy is missing pieces, it's still looking like there's something that he's missing, and he doesn't look the same. So it's when he doesn't have all his all pros, that's how it's going to change for him. And do I expect the Bengals to really change that? Not really. It's just how we talk about the Bengals are really on the rise. They're starting to look like themselves little by little, and the Niners are on that downward spiral. So could this be a game where Purdy starts to prove himself? Honestly, I kind of do believe so. As much as I really want to push the narrative, push the Niners downfall narrative, I really do see the 49ers waking it up against the Bengals, kind of maybe setting the Bengals back down, kind of down into their place, how they've kind of been that disappointing team as of late. So I expect a big win, not a big win, but just a sound win for the 49ers, kind of a confidence boost for Brock Purdy in itself. But of course, now into our game. Last week I had a lot of confidence for this. I know, we have our little doc that we keep our scores on. I've had the Rams as my pick for the past couple weeks, and watching this game against the Steelers, it really did change some perspective in me. I'm gonna take your Cowboys in this game. It really hurts me. I want to be proven wrong, of course, but it's just I can't trust this team right now. I had to pick against them right now. It's just when you play that disappointing against a team like the Steelers, and coming up against the Cowboys team who is coming off bye, it's they had more time to prepare for us. You guys have more. You guys have rest. That's the key thing here, and we're banged up. We're demoralized at a bit. I would hope that the leaders on this team can pick us back up, and I would hope McVay can finally work on the mistakes he's made, which he has had his own faults throughout this season. It's been more than we've been accustomed to, but at the end of the day, I do expect a loss here. Love to be proven wrong, but it's been looking bleak with my guys.
Yeah, and obviously, we're looking at my Cowboys once again. This is another game where this is a very winnable game for the Cowboys, and our next couple games, they're on the more winnable games. But obviously, starting out, we gotta focus on this Rams team, because I know the Rams, how they look against the Steelers, but when we're really looking at it, this is a Rams team that obviously still puts up a fight. I mean, when you got Cooper Kupp coming back from the injury, who had a pretty bad game against the Steelers team, but obviously the more of the load was going to Puka Nacua, so that's obviously something else to look at with the corners of Mike Cowboys with DaRon Bland, Jordan Lewis, and Stephon Gilmore. How are they be able to contain these two high-powered receivers, and then with a little glimpse of Tutu Atwell here and there. But it's just, this defense is going to have to wake up against this Ram team. It's a team not to sleep on. This is exactly how I felt last year. But, we had our talk about that when they went up against each other with Cooper Rush. He was able to get the job done. Now we actually have our starting quarterback, Dak, back, who, working his way up there to finally, get the respect that he deserves. And he deserves so much of that. But obviously we have to finish strong with this game, especially against an NFC, an NFC rival here. Not, division rival, but NFC rival historic from the past there. And obviously, conference games obviously matter the most here and there. And this is especially here. This is two teams that, have potential for playoffs. The Rams do have, pretty minuscule potential with Matthew Stafford, but with that depleted offensive line that you could look at as well, and then our high-powered D-line, we think it's really going to have to take advantage to Matthew Stafford, which is exactly what we did last year, capitalize off that, turnovers. But nonetheless, this is another team. This is a team that Cowboys should still not sleep on. It's going to be a great game regardless. And obviously now moving on, closing off with my highlight game of the week, which I think is probably going to be the game of the week. I think the Cleveland Browns and the Seattle Seahawks. You're coming up, once again, two teams that are coming up on a rise here. Geno Smith finally, getting as a group once again after, little couple losses. And then the Cleveland Browns with the quarterback situation with, I'm still not determined if Deshaun Watson is going to miss again, which from the looks of it, it might well be, since there are concerns from an MRI that he did re-injure his shoulder. He did re-injure his shoulder from a couple weeks ago from when they first discovered it, but obviously that's what they're really concerned about. So more updates to come for the following weeks. Really, that's gonna be a game time decision, especially since the shoulder he did re-injure. But for the looks of it, it might potentially be PJ Walker against this team. And this is two good defenses. The Cleveland Browns defense is one defense that's slept on for the most part. They saw what they can do against the Niners. They saw what they can do against the Colts for the most part here and there. And same with the Seattle Seahawks, which I talked about in the recap. There's two young defenses, great starters on every side of the ball. You got Myles Garrett. You got the rookie Devin Witherspoon, who's finally making a name for himself. And just really, and then Bobby Wagner, who is future Hall of Famer in that linebacker core. Lots of names around in those defenses. So it's gonna be a pretty decent defensive battle. Who knows if PJ Walker can get it done against this offense of the Seahawks, who's starting to pick it up a bit, with DK Metcalf having a really bad decline, Tyler Lockett, the fossil, having a good game, and then Bobo, who's finally having it here and there, and then the other rookie Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was my rookie of the year, but really doesn't look like it. But obviously there's going to be another great game regardless. Nice defensive battle, but it just depends on the quarterbacks, which I do think Geno Smith will have the more potential here to win this game.
Yeah, honestly, great games to highlight this week. It's going to be a great week. Let's hope our picks can improve off of a pretty horrible week. So that is going to wrap us up for our preview of Week 8. A lot of good games. We're pushing through. The halfway point is almost upon us. So hopefully got a lot more good to talk about for you guys. And of course, barring any more news, obviously we just got one out the day we recorded this. The day after this video comes out, we will come out with our second edition of Bean Talk. So I hope you guys can stick around to watch that. Thank you guys for all the support, and we'll see you guys real soon.